Welcome to the Smack Happy Design Videocast, where we explore all things web and marketing. With your hosts, Nicole and Danielle.
Hi, welcome to episode number 19. I'm Nicole.
And I'm Danielle.
And I just want to remind our audience that we'll be taking some notes for you. So just sit back, relax, and listen. And you can download those notes at smackhappy.com/videos. Today, our guest is Jeannine Kay, a speaking coach who focuses on helping women find their voice. Welcome, Jeannine.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so tell us a little more about yourself.
Yes, I started my business about 13 years ago, and it came about because I was a very reluctant speaker. I'd gotten a BFA in dance, and I think back on that and think, oh, I got to be on stage and I didn't have to talk. I thought that was appealing to me. And then I went on to get an MBA in marketing, which actually has a lot to do with speaking. I think in our work lives, maybe all of our speaking, or a lot of it anyway, is related to marketing. But I was at a birthday party. This was some years later. It was a huge birthday party, and it was a very close friend of mine. Lots of people were giving toasts, and I thought, no way was I going to get up there and do that. But that night I decided, ooh, I've got to do something about this. This has to change. So I started pursuing speaking. I went to Toastmasters and speaking circles. I took voice and speech at American Conservatory Theater. I went to Bats Improv. I went to the National Speakers Association for a program. I did lots and lots of things until I felt comfortable speaking. And then I thought, ooh, this is an issue for a lot of people. I could make it so much faster for them to transform that aspect of their lives. And I would have a lot of empathy if that was an issue for them. Mm-hmm. So that's how that got started. And now I do work with men, and my focus is on helping women be more successful in their work lives, because the people I see, they love what they do, they're great at what they do, and they'll progress more quickly if they have the communication skills to assist them in their work lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know one example of that. I remember when we had like a little one-to-one, you were talking about helping women specifically like speak up more during meetings and why it's important to speak up during meetings. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little, maybe first about why it's important, and then a few tips on like how to do it.
Yeah. There are lots of us who are either now or have been anxious about speaking up. And what I'd say in those conversations or meetings, or maybe you get the opportunity to give a presentation and try to get someone else to do it, I would say that the thing to remember is that it's not about perfection. It's about participation. I mean, whoever hired you, they believed in you, and so they want to hear from you. So if you get focused on simply participating as the beginning phase, that's helpful. I'd say also that preparing is a good thing. If you know what's going to be on an agenda and you can get ready in advance and think, what's the best contribution I could make? Or what's important about this to me? That can be helpful. Now, there are lots of people for whom this is not an issue. In fact, some people's issue is, gee, how can I be more concise? I start talking and I keep going. But for the people who are reluctant to speak up, I could tell you about one tool as an example that's helpful, is reappraising anxiety as excitement. I don't know, have the two of you ever heard about that?
Mm-mm.
I
Okay.
haven't say that I have, because if I did, I feel like my life would be a lot different at this point.
Okay, so I'm glad to tell you about this. So there's a woman named Allison Wood Brooks, and she is a PhD. She teaches at Harvard Business School. And she was doing some research. She was thinking about how when people are very anxious, they'll often say, "Oh, I'm so nervous about this. I'm so anxious. I'm really worried about how it's going to go." And most often, the response people give is, "Oh, calm down. You'll be fine. You'll do fine." But that doesn't seem to help people. So her theory was that, or her hypothesis, the one she tested, was that since anxiety is a high arousal state, which means that your heart's pounding, you have these physiological symptoms that are high arousal, that rather than trying to calm down, that was just too much of a gap. And so she was looking that excitement is a close neighbor to anxiety. So what she tested was groups of people broken into two parts. So individuals in each group would be asked to either say, "I'm calm," or "I'm excited." And she tested people in terms of math performance and singing and public speaking. And in each situation, interestingly, the people who said, "I'm calm," didn't perform any better, and they didn't feel better in these three situations. The people who said, "I'm excited," performed better and felt better. So it's interesting. What that meant for public speaking was that each individual would get up from the group of "I'm excited" or "I'm calm." They would present, and then some people would evaluate them who didn't know anything about this, what the experiment was. And repeatedly, they found that the speakers who had beforehand said in private, "I'm excited," they were more persuasive, they were scored as more competent and more confident. And they, for themselves, reported that they had a better experience because they felt excited. So then Dr. Brooks wanted to find out, well, why would they perform better? And it has to do with the mindset. So the person who's saying to themselves, "Oh, I'm so anxious," or "I'm calm," which wasn't true, they had a negative, like a threat mindset. They were focused on what could go wrong from this thing they were doing, in contrast to the people who had an opportunity mindset or more positive mindset by saying, "I'm excited," because they were focused on the good possibilities that could come about from them speaking. So that's why if you're going to speak, whether it's a difficult conversation or a meeting or a presentation, if you can think ahead and even say out loud, "I'm excited," it should be helpful to you.
It's funny that when you were going through that, I was thinking about how, and now granted, not every time, because the reaction to me telling my son, my 4-year-old, to like calm down, sometimes it comes out, it happens, but I try, it's so funny because I try to actually allow him to kind of like experience all of those anxieties and things like that, instead of saying like, "You can't feel that way, you can't do that," because I feel like I grew up, and this is no one's fault or nothing bad against anybody, but I grew up feeling like I can't feel that way, I can't talk about things that way. I always have to pretend like I'm happy, like "You'll be fine, just it'll roll off your shoulders," like that sort of thing. So it's really hard to get out of that. And that's a great, study, because I feel like there's definitely some valid points that I've practiced, with my own child, growing up and having them feel like it's okay to have feelings about things.
Mhm.
You know, I still struggle with that myself. I think it's just because it's, you know, a second nature sort of thing that you have to try to pull yourself out of a bad habit into a good habit.
Right.
But yeah, that's a really cool study. I'd like to actually look more into that.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting because for a lot of us, the speaking symptoms we feel in our bodies are the ones we really don't like. And then there are the thoughts that contribute to that too. And so if our thoughts are, oh, I'm so anxious, I'm so afraid, kind of makes it worse. Saying I'm excited doesn't change your body. Your heart's still beating at the same rate. But your mindset about it changes. Now, I don't know about your son. He was having anxious feelings and you wanted him to calm down?
He's always anxious. He's always very, he doesn't want to do something wrong. Or, you know, doesn't want to, I think, disappoint either me or Julian, my husband. So it really is the same exact feeling I feel like that I would have, you know, in a meeting situation. Where, you know, I don't want to disappoint somebody. And I know there's other people that I've talked to recently too that have told me the same thing that are not women. I just spoke to somebody who was telling me, you know, they just don't want to disappoint somebody. They want to be perfect and everything. And my advice was something I'm learning is to strive for progress and not for perfection. And, you know, kind of living that way as opposed to, you know, always trying to do things like A-OK, perfect, that sort of thing. Because, I mean, that's how you learn too, especially in web design and coding and things like that. There's a lot of very particular things that you need to learn. So it's intimidating, but, you know, strive for progress. That's what
I would say. Yeah, I mean, those would be my two messages about participating in meetings, for instance, speaking up. One is participate. So whether it's your son or many of us who grow up feeling like, oh, what if I get it wrong? What if I don't articulate it very well? Or what if people disagree and want to argue? You know, we've got a lot of those fears. And yet, if we don't participate, we don't make the progress. And that's the second one, is if we've got these very high expectations that we do a great job every time, well, then we're not going to get enough experience to progress. So really kind of throwing that off and saying, oh, my goals are to participate and to progress, then we've got a greater likelihood of that happening. I mean, the two things I'd add on that, one is that we can evaluate ourselves after we do these things to help us progress. One is to say, so what did I do well when I spoke up in that meeting? And then you can really think about that and then give some attention to, if I had to do over again, what would I do differently? And that's a better way to make progress, because too often we come from a situation and think, oh, I didn't do that perfectly. Right, you didn't do it perfectly, but that was 3%, and 97% of it you did great. So we want to get that focus on what we did do well, and then something we might change as well. I guess another suggestion I'd have is changing our focus. I think so often we've got a spotlight on ourselves when we go into that situation. So if instead you can change your focus to the other people or the other person to whom you're speaking, that's one option. Another is to be thinking about your message. I'm focused on, let me say this let me convey it to this other person. And then the third is you've got a purpose when you're doing this. I mean, let's say you're meeting with your team and you're working on a project. You want to contribute your best so that the project turns out its best. And whether people go along with what you say or decide to go a different way, at least you made your contribution instead of not and then regretting it later, or that things you didn't, the possibility that maybe you did have something important to contribute. So
Yeah, I think so for helping with meetings, we've got participating, preparing, turning anxiety into excitement, remembering that we are progress, not perfection. Just such a good little phrase to keep in mind, like all the time throughout like everything in life.
Everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Changing out the focus, and then remembering that you've got a purpose. Is that all?
Yeah. Yeah. Good note taking.
Okay, great. So another thing that we had talked about when we had our one-to-one a little while ago was how to promote your positives rather than waiting for recognition. And I think this is for like when you're, working for a company and you've got a manager and, you've done something well and you're not getting that recognition, right?
Right. Right.
So you're talking about, speaking up and making sure that you get what you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is that right?
So people will sometimes say to me, well, I do a great job. I assume they're noticing that. Well, they might be, but most of the time, everyone's working hard at whatever their job is. And so they may not notice what a great job you're doing. And so you might have to tell them. And I would also advise that lots of people are speaking about what they do. And if you're not speaking about what you're doing, people may assume that you're not doing great work. So I'm not talking about being arrogant, and I like to talk about arrogance later, but I'm talking about telling the truth in an authentic way about what you're accomplishing in the workplace. And so, first of all, if you're someone who hasn't been doing that, you need to notice what you do. So it might be that great big project that's completed or many points along the way, or it could be how you handle a difficult client or the kind of patience you show or your creativity. So you've really got to notice that, and then I'd recommend you start keeping track of it because it's easy to forget that in the rush of the day. And if you can show this to yourself and let that transform you, it's really letting facts transform your perception of yourself so that you can begin talking about yourself and what you're capable of, what you've done and what you could do. So then you need to practice saying it out loud, whether that's alone, with a coach, with someone who's supportive of you and wants your success, because you need to get comfortable talking about that. And if you haven't been doing it, it might not feel comfortable. Another thing you can do is show your work. Make a point of, you get an email from someone, a client who's very happy with the conversation you had or the work you did for them. You want to pass that on. If you're going to be speaking or running a meeting, whatever that is, you might ask the person to whom you report to come and see that, be witness to it. All that said, you need to be able to also say it, what you've accomplished, and how you work that people appreciate. So that can come up, that opportunity, maybe every 6 months or once a year. It's not often enough, though. And so a lot of people have a one-to-one conversation with the person to whom they report, maybe every week or every 2 weeks. And a lot of times those get filled up entirely with what you're working on, process kinds of conversations. And it behooves you to say to that person, I'd like to talk about my career or what I'm doing, how I'm progressing. So you can talk about some of these things and say, what's your feedback on that? Or I would like to be promoted to this position in the next year. What do you think I need to do to make that happen? It's like just becoming a more active participant in your career path, being able to talk about what you've done, what you want, where you want to go, and getting the assistance and support of other people to help you do that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's interesting because let's just say it's an employee and employer sort of conversation. On the employee side of it, I think a lot of times people don't feel comfortable talking about that stuff. They're like afraid, like we were just talking about, afraid of what's going to happen. Maybe they're going to upset their employee or their employer because they're going to say something wrong. But then at the same time, it's like, I wonder if the employer, though, too, could also have actively be thinking about this sort of thing and try to ask these questions and, promote that sort of environment so that they know right off the bat, wow, I can actually really talk to this person. And I think Nicole's a great example because I just tell her whatever is on my mind, which is probably dangerous. That's what it is. But it's nice to feel comfortable right off the bat with somebody like that, and just setting that environment and knowing that you're able to do that without any judgment or anything like that. And I know that's not going to always be the case. I know that there's people that are going to be working in huge corporate situations and the environment is very different from a really close-knit little remote team that has, web design. We're all creatives, we all have the great personalities and things like that. Everyone's so cool and different, but sometimes you might not always, be faced with that. So it's, I think I'd be interested in understanding. I wonder if there's something, again, if the culture would have anything to do with it, like if an employer could change the culture to make that more comfortable, find different ways to help the people feel motivated, without giving out raises every 10 days or whatever, because I know they're worried about that, but
Right. Nicole, did you want to comment? I want to say some things about it, but what do you think?
Yeah, I think, that is great if you've got an approachable boss or manager. Mm-hmm. But what if that's not the case? Or what if you are just so afraid to say anything?
Mm-hmm.
I was definitely like that when I started working 20 years ago. Mm-hmm. I was afraid of everything, right? So, there's just such a two extremes here that you can find yourself in, and then there's lots of nice happy middle ground. But so I guess that's what I'm curious about. What if you still just don't have the courage to mm-hmm. go and speak up about it, even if the boss is welcoming or unwelcoming?
Mm-hmm. Right. So in situations that have to do with speaking, we probably don't want to go from point A to point Z. If we're having these kinds of concerns. So if you have a boss that's approachable, that makes it easier. If they're not, you still want to find some ways to begin strengthening the relationship and helping them to see your value, which they may not otherwise see, and you want to get assistance from them being better at the job you do. So it might not be a great big bold, how can I advance to this in the coming year, this position in the coming year? But you might say, this is what I've done over the past week. This is what went well. This is what I accomplished. I'm wondering, are there some points that you think I could do better? Or you've got to start somehow, and I think starting small is probably the way. But you don't want to give it up, feel that, I just can't talk to that person. I think you have to make some attempts and realize that it's not personal. There are people with their personalities, and some of those personalities are warm and welcoming, and they want to connect with you. and have a good working relationship, and other people are less concerned with that. And so that's not about you. That's about how they roll. And so you want to make the best of, okay, I can still go in and talk to that person. I'm not going to expect that it's going to be warm in the way it is with some other people. However, this is the person I report to, and I want to make the most of that.
Yeah, and I think that's a good way to kind of think about it on the small end. Like if think about it like you're asking for help, right?
Mm-hmm.
And most people want to help each other. So if you're kind of coming at it from that angle, maybe it's just easier to, think, okay, I can ask someone for help. Like, that's easy.
Yes.
I was also,
yeah, go ahead, Jeannine.
I was just going to say about helping. I was thinking too, like even the people who might not have that caring, nurturing sort of personality or are not warm and fuzzy, maybe they even see it as like, okay, I'm going to help this person so that, A, B, and C becomes better. And, we see like better return. Like if they talk about it in a very like analytical way, they're still helping you. You know what I mean? So I guess it's just a way of like, for me, like I would always be offended. Like when, the person didn't meet me with a warm and cozy, I want to help you too feeling.
Mm-hmm.
So then I would kind of like shut down, and then it would get even like weirder, with not being able to ask things and whatever. But I feel like later, now I can think about things like, well, even if this person isn't so warm and fuzzy, they're still willing to go out of their way to help me, whether it's they're being nice or they're just being cordial or whatever. And trying, to understand, like you said, to not take it personally. And I don't want to say either that it's just that's business or whatever, because it's a lot more intricate than that. But, try not to take things personally too, I think is also helpful. And I've talked to you about this too, about, just understanding that people are different and you're not always going to have the same conversation from one person to another. You just have to be open-minded and, figure out the best foot forward, to take. So if that's your boss who, typically doesn't want to help anybody willingly, you might have to talk to them a different way about it. Maybe like, take them out to lunch or do something that seems unexpected. I don't know. Maybe surprise them and, just really dive in and go to point C.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
But, yeah,
But
it also is really familiar.
So and sometimes the truth is that person could be very short-tempered. They may be dismissive. We don't have a guarantee that they even want to be helpful. And yet we have to remember, even in that situation, that it's not personal. That's how they are. And that this is our career. So we may have to keep pursuing that or pursuing around that, some other pathways. But we don't want to give it up, is all I'm saying, just because that person is difficult or dismissive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what would you say is the number one thing that someone could do right now to help advance their career?
I would say that they should intentionally build their confidence. Because if you believe in yourself, other people are going to believe in you. And if you don't, other people are not. Or they might see how competent you are and be frustrated that you aren't owning that. Arrogance is very distasteful in our society. I think women in particular got the message, do not be arrogant. Arrogant has this evaluation of self as though you're better, more important. And yet I think we've swung too often over to modesty, which is to diminish your value, to be quiet, to let others make the decisions, lead the way. So I'm promoting confidence as the place where you recognize the value of other people and you recognize your value. And that helps you speak up, know that your opinions, ideas, your expertise, people want to hear about it. It will make a difference in the world or your team or your company. And these other two places don't take as much work in a certain way. I mean, you can go along for a long time and maybe your confidence will, by circumstances, increase. But if you intentionally decide, I'm going to work on this because I can see the value of confidence, then that will really help you feel better and do better work. You'll have more courage. You'll realize, oh, I want to do my best. I want to make this contribution. And if it doesn't work out, well, I'll find another way. I mean, we want to be able to learn from what doesn't go as well as we wanted, but if we hold back, and again, it's the issue of progress. That's how we make the progress, is we work on our confidence, we take chances, we see how it goes, we recalibrate. It's not that we're ever going to get to this place that's solid state confidence for everything for all time, but it can help us move along. Particularly if we feel like, oh, I know how to take care of myself, to be focused on others, to listen well, that you're just on that path for confidence instead of, oh, I don't want to try that.
Yeah, I think that's just so important, believing in yourself and having the confidence and taking chances.
Yeah.
That is how you make the progress.
Yeah, and it feels better. It feels better not to be 100% confident, but to be more confident.
Yeah.
I mean, when people have so much anxiety about speaking or excitement, shall we say, excitement that's up here, or they're so, there's no energy behind it, those are not motivating. So you want to go to that middle place where you do feel the excitement and you feel the courage too and the confidence enough to go ahead and do it and take those chances.
Mm-hmm.
How about the two of you? How's confidence feel to you?
I think I think when I feel comfortable with something, meaning, let's take public speaking. You went into a lot of different situations and made yourself comfortable, I guess, over a period of time because you did all these things where you were just doing it and doing it in different ways and stuff like that. So I feel like in that sense, I feel more confident when I feel more comfortable and experienced and like well-versed in something. Mm-hmm. Although I don't know why I didn't really have anybody that inspired me to do this, but I just said that this past year I was going to do things that made me uncomfortable mm-hmm. so that I could become comfortable with them. And doing things that I typically might not have liked to do, which I feel like thinking of that from a creative standpoint, I feel like you get a lot of ideas and you become more comfortable about talking about different things when you just do different things. And for one example, I started reading books again. I haven't read a book since college, so I thought, maybe I'll actually get out one of those things that has a bunch of paper and words in it and read. And, it's been proving to be quite fun. And I'll share something a little bit more personal. So I've struggled probably since I've had my son, I've struggled a lot with my weight and my health and everything like that. And how I know that I am definitely changing was that when I went to see the doctor and, doctors are very like A, B, C, D, E, black and white most of the time. And he said, okay, well, you're still considered obese, on the on the scale of the BMI and whatever, which by PS, side note, BMI is total, excuse my French, bullshit, because it's only based on height and weight, nothing else. So it's very black and white, but so I have a group that I went to, and I shared this with them, and I wouldn't have shared with them if I wasn't feeling confident about myself, and got a lot of great feedback and a lot of people who feel the same, and just kind of knowing, I think in general, that you're not alone actually makes me feel more confident, because I know there's other people out there that experience the same exact thing, way worse things, way better things. We all have our own experiences, and I don't know, just very long explanation short. That's sort of just my experience, I think, with confidence. A couple of different examples.
Yeah. It's interesting, since you have a child, like I mentioned, Danielle, is that sometimes I suggest that the way we think about talking to ourselves about our speaking or our confidence would be the way we talk to our child, instead of some of the old tapes we might have going. So as your child goes off to school or off to their day, you would never say to them, don't speak up in the classroom unless you know exactly what you're going to say and that you're going to be able to say it perfectly. Otherwise, don't say a word, right? There are a lot of things like that. And so you want to make sure that if you wouldn't say that to your child, you don't say it to yourself. You would say to your child, whoo, go into that day, and if you've got an idea and it's the time to say it, make sure you do it. You want to build your confidence. So you want to do those same things for yourselves. We want to take off some of those brakes that we put on ourselves if we're the people who haven't been speaking up.
Yeah, that's a great way.
Yeah, I like that.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me want to be a little bit more like a 4-year-old. I just said that the other day, because sometimes I get really silly, and it feels good to be silly and just be, uninhibited, I guess. I don't know if that's the right word, but just letting it all out and not caring about what people think.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jeannine, tell us, I'm going to start wrapping up here. Tell us what inspires you most.
I'm always inspired by my clients who, after we work together, are doing things that they weren't doing before that have to do with speaking. Mm. And that not just that they're doing them and they're effective, but they're enjoying them. Because a lot of people can't at the beginning think, oh, I could never enjoy this. It's a terrifying thing. And they get better, they get more confident, and then they do that. They're more visible, they make more of a contribution, and then they feel better and they enjoy it. I guess, though, in our current times, what I'd say I'm particularly inspired by, there are lots of ways in which women are speaking up now. And one of them is that so many women are going to run for office. All over this country, to be mayors, to be governors, to be in the Senate, in the House. So that's very exciting. I mean, it's a huge change, and certainly do. So I'm inspired by that.
Yeah, that is definitely inspiring, and I hope that a lot of them win.
Yes. Yes.
All right. So, can you please let our audience know how to get in touch with you if they'd like to work with you on speaking up a little more?
Yes, my website is givingvoice.biz, B-I-Z, and there's a contact place there. So you could reach me that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Jeannine. We really enjoyed talking with you. And I'd like to thank our audience for joining this Mac Happy video cast. We aim to help elevate your business through real life experiences and advice.
Until next time, bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Smack Happy Design videocast. For more information and downloads, visit smackhappy.com/videocast, where you'll find more episodes and the opportunity to subscribe on YouTube or iTunes. You can also sign up for our newsletter delivered to your inbox monthly. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with your friends and colleagues. Again, that's smackhappy.com/videocast. See you next time.